Yep, definitely. We have some really interesting questions from our audience. So maybe I will pick some of those not in a specific order. Um, One of the questions asked by the audience is, what is the impact of the COVID on the cloud adoptions? Perhaps Rob and Siobhan, from your customer perspective, what are the effects of COVID in your particular application or in your particular business when it comes to adopting the cloud? Maybe perhaps you can talk about it.
I think broadening it out in terms of cloud adoption, I think there's two key strands, one of which, and I think Siobhan touched on, which is absolutely crucial, which is more. It's the way forward. The other is a careful eye on how people consume cloud, to make sure that they get the best experiences, because so many more people are accessing and consuming that from home. So they would be my two sort of headline pieces there. Sorry, Siobhan.
I'd agree. So, luckily we were able to enable people from working home quite seamlessly. I think the other thing it's done for us is we've definitely seen an uptick in security concerns. So we're looking now towards more how cloud security can help us. And I think that's here to stay. And then finally, as we're looking to restart our kind of IT project roadmap and want to start preparing for the future, we're able to stand up quite cheap environments to test things like machine learning or IoT. So it's enabled us to kind of stay agile and keep almost moving forward without having to make big capital investments, which would be almost impossible in the current environment.
So Siobhan, on the subject of security, do you feel more secure being in cloud, or less secure, or no more secure?
I think as an IT director, right, you never feel completely secure, but I definitely feel more secure in a cloud environment, because I feel like, we're getting best of breed security from the cloud provider, and then it's up to my team to add the additional layers that support our business and the way we work. And we've definitely come across some cloud security solutions, whether that's protecting our email or kind of malware security, that have helped us to deploy more quickly as well, rather than relying on any on-prem solutions.
That's very interesting. Thank you.
Yeah, great. Thank you for providing that insight. And I think that really relates to another question from the audience is, what are the risks of moving to the cloud? Maybe perhaps you can share, are there any risk factors or risks that you're considering during or before the migration, or maybe even during the migration? So what are the risks of moving to the cloud? So maybe perhaps I'll go back to Siobhan. Have you considered the risks during your process and assessments?
Obviously, as we were doing platform migrations, we had the inherent project risks that you would always have when you're moving data. But I think actually within a cloud environment, we're able to mitigate more of those risks, because we can have more test environments more easily, more dev environments, as required. I think Rob made an interesting point. It's about now controlling things and making sure that we always have a clear view of where everything is, and making sure that we sort of remember to turn things off in the cloud. It's sort of easy to leave them switched on if we no longer need them. So I didn't kind of lie awake at night about any inherent risks in moving to cloud, but recognize we needed additional controls in place to work in this way. I'm not sure if that answers your question, but.
Absolutely, I think thanks, Siobhan. And Rob, maybe from your side, any those risks consideration during or before the decision of moving to the cloud? I know in your situation, because there was an issue with 1 hour down, but any other risks that you might consider during the process of migrating to the cloud?
I think probably the biggest risk is the consumer sees the cloud as safe. They just make that assumption. And of course, yes, it is safe, but there's a lot of work that goes in behind the scenes. So we kind of hand over the management of the hardware, the tin, that's awesome, to the people that know it best. We hand over a lot of the operating system management, but the management in terms of the applications and the services still exists. So I think it's quite crucial that business understands that takes time to make sure it's got right. And I think Siobhan hits the nail on the head with resources and making sure that they're turned off. And that's been a problem sort of from the start of cloud. I mean, certainly I can remember in the early days of cloud, coming to an employee and saying, I've got a X £1,000 bill here. What happened? Oh, I was testing something 4 months ago. Did you turn it off? I assumed as it was a trial, it would be cancelled. So it's those kind of assumptions that sometimes get made that can be a bit of an interesting challenge. But I think the lion's share of it is all opportunities, you know, and I think when you see a security risk, is it a security risk or is it an opportunity? I'm the eternal optimist. I always see them as opportunities. They're chances to implement awesome solutions, to build better and build back better, which I think is the key thing that we need to be focusing on now.
Yeah, I just want to add to that moving to cloud doesn't mean shredding the responsibility for the applications. You still have, it's still an application. You still have to you still have to manage it and understand it, and the facets of it. You understand the security requirements of the application. I suppose that's maybe for a consumer, cloud is seen as being just always on and simple, but actually behind the scenes it's still very complex. You still have to make sure that you've got antivirus protection and malware protection. You still got to make sure you've got VPN circuits and SSL certificates. You have to do all those things. So I guess what I'm trying to say, maybe badly, is you can't just put it in the cloud and forget about it. You have to put it in the cloud and continue to manage it.
Great. I've got another question from the audience, is that although it has been answered by one of my colleagues, I think it's an interesting topic. So I think this will be addressing to Ross and Christian. What are the applications are suitable for the cloud adoptions? Yeah, it's a very general question. It's not only about, although we're talking about JD Edwards, I think in this case, what are the applications are suitable for cloud adoptions? Maybe perhaps start with you, Ross.
Perfect, 100%, thank you. So it's an interesting one. If we look at cloud, previous clouds, or anyone else's clouds, it wasn't really designed for any application. And we're saying ultimately anything that runs on i386 can be virtualized, can be run in our cloud, can be secured, and then the expansion comes on, or the improvement comes on, depending on what you want to do. So from a workload perspective, the only thing we need to worry about is latency. How far away is that workload going to be from you? And there's ways to mitigate that when it comes to cloud. So, being very brash, every workload should run in the cloud at the end of the day. It makes commercial sense. It just depends on how complicated your application is, or how many customizations it has, and all these pieces. But when we really boil down to it, we've got a piece of data we want to access and a system to do it from. And that can be cloud ready.
And I'd kind of add to that I do see differences in the different cloud providers that we've experienced, but I guess fundamentally, if you're running an Oracle application, then, and Rob's kind of said this, is that it makes sense that might run in an Oracle cloud. Who better to run an Oracle application than in an Oracle cloud? From a support perspective, if I've got a performance issue, it's JD Edwards, it's running on Oracle, it's all Oracle. It kind of simplifies the relationship with the ultimate software vendor as well. But I think increasingly, and we certainly are seeing it now, Rob's using it with the virtual database machines, but if you look at the cloud environments, we've got whether it's multi-factor authentication built into it, whether we're using PaaS-based load balancers. When I say PaaS, I mean subscription-based, not software-based or hardware-based load balancers or web application framework tools. So there's increasingly a set of tools becoming available to those customers. Probably the best example would be the Oracle Integration Cloud Services, which enable you to have an integration platform that you can plug into JD Edwards to enable you to expose JD Edwards safely and securely to applications that may exist even outside the Oracle cloud. Important to say that both Pizza Express and CH&Co have workloads that their JD Edwards system has to talk to that don't sit in Oracle Cloud. So being in Oracle Cloud doesn't mean that everything else has to be in Oracle Cloud. It's an open an open environment where you don't face more integration challenges. In fact, you can actually face less integration challenges often within the cloud.
Great. Thank you, Christian. I've got one more question for Siobhan and Rob. This is coming from the audience. It's among the cloud advantages. Can you tell us one or two first you see the most important for the business specifically, with some example to your business adopting to the cloud? What are the advantages for your most important business specifically? So perhaps maybe Rob, can you share with us one or two first important things that really have an impact to your business? Can you share with us, please?
Yeah, with pleasure. I think that the first one is cost. That's huge advantage to us, and also availability. With the careful planning we've done with Christian's team, we can do maintenance and servicing on our buildings and other things as we need to, and there's no impact to the availability of 9.2. We can carry out the maintenance that we need, and we can deliver that availability. So it gives us a lot of control over the environment, surprisingly more than when you're on spinning Rust, because failing over between two different server infrastructures in two different physical locations is incredibly complex and expensive and difficult. With the budget we use for 9.2 in the Oracle Cloud, we could not afford that type of redundancy. Everything would have to be running on one or two servers, sitting in a small server room in a large office. With the budget with Oracle Cloud, we've got the luxury of proper high-end enterprise redundancy. So I think that's probably the biggest one.
Great, Rob. Siobhan, any insight you would like to share with the audience about the one or two most important things that have impact to your business specifically?
Yeah, sure. I think it's kind of two sides of the same coin, really. So the first one I would say is stability and always on platform. So, you know, if people want to order a pizza or book a table, they expect our website, our app to just work. And using cloud technology, we have really high availability, as we do for our financial platforms as well. So on one side, it's the stability and security. But then on the other side, as I was kind of referring to earlier, it's that opportunity to test and learn in a relatively cheap way. So, you know, a small restaurant or a restaurant chain like ours starting to look at IoT means I don't have to make a huge upfront investment or commitment. We can instead trial it in a few restaurants, put the sensors in, gather the data and see where the benefits lie. That's incredibly important, that agility, as is the agility we get when we're trialing new customer interactions and platforms. We don't have to invest for final outcome. We can really use the cloud to test and learn.
Great, Siobhan. That's very good example about not only by shifting to the cloud, but actually you are innovating by extending all this capability without a lot of cost, without a lot of I would say a complexity. You can just adopt by extending that part. Great insight. Thank you for that. I think we have one more question, right? So maybe question both to Christian and Ross. What does the Oracle Cloud differentiate to any other cloud in the market? How does that difference? Maybe I'll start off with you, Ross.
That's great. Let me give you the corporate pitch. Okay, so relatively simply, security, cost, availability, and performance. It couldn't, I've actually got some notes here, but it couldn't be simpler. Is we're taking enterprise workloads and we're running them in the cloud at enterprise level. That is the differential. We're not trying to sell cores, we're trying to sell performance. And that's what matters to enterprise. And Christian will have a little tie-in here when it comes to bring your own license and a couple of other things.
Yeah,
hand it over to you.
Yeah. For me, it's quite simple. Okay, we're an Oracle partner. We're an Oracle Cloud Service provider. You know, we see our role very much as helping Oracle customers get the most out of the the JDA technology, you know, we use Oracle databases, we use Oracle WebLogic Server, we use Oracle load balancers and an Oracle integration cloud services, and increasingly we're seeing how Oracle Cloud is uniquely providing us with tools that aren't available in other clouds. So for us, that makes sense. But fundamentally, you know, it's about, you know, if we need support from Oracle, you know, if our customer needs support from Oracle, it's a close family. You know, there's never pointing fingers at different vendors. That's not to say that, you know, there's many of our customers, in fact, Pizza Express, you know, have some workloads, I think, running in some other cloud providers. You don't have to choose between one or the other. It's about what's the right cloud for the right workload.
That's exactly. We are working together with other cloud vendor. Indeed, it is everything about the value add to the customer. I mean, we are not pushing, you have to run it. And by the way, another thing that I spotted recently, we talk about hybrid, and it is not only running in our public cloud, we can also run cloud at customer. So let's say data sovereignty, you can't move to the public cloud, we can actually run cloud inside your data center you desire. So I think there's another great example that the flexibility we are providing to customer. So I think with that, we've answered most of the questions. Again, lots of interesting questions that came through during the Q&A.